Hello everyone and welcome to Netways YouTube channel. In this video we are continuing to look at the Ansible basics, and first thing I normally like to do is just poke around the new product, and then we are going to look at building the inventory. Now poking around sometimes can be very useful. So here what we've got is our Ansible shell. This is normal Unix shell of a container with Ansible installed on it. Now first thing that I like to do is check the version of the Ansible installed, and the command for it is Ansible --version. Brilliant. Now it shows some useful information. First of all, the actual version itself. It shows that our version is 2.5.4, which is not the latest and greatest, but for the purpose of our video it's good enough. Now it also shows us information about the config file location, and we can see that it's in etc ansible ansible.cfg. Good to note. Executable location is as usual user bin, and Ansible Python modules location is user lib python 2.7 dist packages Ansible. Let's first dig into the actual executable location and have a look at it. And I'm gonna do ls-l grep Ansible to see what we've got matching Ansible. And straight away we can see that we've got an executable file called just Ansible, and then we've got loads of different symlinks that also point to that same executable. So we've got Ansible doc, Ansible Galaxy, Ansible config, and so on. And these are all just aliases of Ansible command. So whenever you say run an Ansible playbook and you use Ansible-playbook command to do that, or you're using Ansible-vault to encrypt or decrypt some variables, you actually only running the default Ansible executable. So bear that in mind. Now we will have some practice with our network. This is our practice topology. We've got two data centers, DC1 on the left and DC2 on the right, and each DC has a couple of routers, R1 and R2, and a couple of switches, SW1 and SW2. Each switch also has a web server connected to it. This is a customer's web servers that we will manage on our customer's behalf. So first thing first, we need to build our inventory to make sure that we indicate all the devices that we are going to be managing using our Ansible. So task 1 is the inventory build and test. The inventory format, as I mentioned in the introduction video, is just a text file, and it follows this this template. So you indicate the host name. This is the most important bit, and then you can also give some parameters and their values to that host. You can also group hosts. The group is given in the square brackets. The group name is indicated in square brackets, and then it is followed by the host names, and again you can add some parameters individually for each host. Then you can also have nested groups, which is a group that itself contains other groups, and the syntax for it is group colon and children, also in the square brackets, and then the names of nested groups. Also you can have variables defined for entire group at once, and syntax again is in square bracket group name and then colon vars, and then you can give these parameters. So in our case, what I want to start with is I'm going to try manage the VLANs using Ansible in our topology. So for the switches, our inventory would look something like this. We would have two groups with just hosts in them, DC1 switches listing host DC1 switch 1 and DC1 switch 2, group DC2 switches listing the DC2 switches. Then we will have a group called switches, which will encompass all the DCs in it, so DC1 switches and DC2 switches. And I'm also going to give it some important variables like Ansible connection, which gives us the connection type and indicates that we are going to access these devices over the network CLI. Also, I'm indicating the Ansible network OS is iOS, so Ansible knows how to put in the commands and how to interpret the output, and also indicating the Ansible user, which is admin in our case. I could also include the password, but this is a bad practice to include the unencrypted variables for passwords in your plays or playbooks or inventory. We will look at encrypting our variables in a later video. So now let's do that and configure our inventory. So I will go to default inventory location, which is etc Ansible, and I'm going to edit the host file. Now you can see that by default Vim uses a not very convenient color scheme, so I usually change it, and this is a hint just for Vim users. There is a command color scheme, and my favorite one for it is called Elf Lord, and you can see it applies a much easier on your eye color scheme for commented lines. And as I said in the introduction, by default this inventory is absolutely empty, so I'm going to go into insert mode and start throwing in our hosts. So we'll start with DC1 switches, followed by DC2 switches, and then the master group switches, and finally we'll give them our variables. Excellent, that's it. So our inventory is now populated with the info for switches. Now we need to test our inventory, and there is a module that will help us called ping. So to use individual module, what you need to do is you need to type in Ansible -m for module, the name of the module, which is in our case ping, and then you need to indicate what you want to execute that module against. So in our case, we are going to execute it against a group called switches. So I will just say switches, and I will also add a key for asking us the password, because we didn't indicate that in the inventory. So I'll say ask pass. That will make sure that we are getting the password taken at the execution time and it's not shown in clear text. So I'll type in my password and press enter, and we can see that our ping has failed on 3 out of 4 switches for some reason, and it says that the authenticity of host DC1 switch 2, DC2 switch 1 and DC2 switch 2 cannot be established. That happens because this is a Linux box, and by default it tries to verify the SSH key of the server that it connects to. Now remember, we are using SSH, so Ansible host is actually considered to be a client for these devices when it connects by SSH. So what we need to do here is we need to modify the parameter that says that these keys need to be checked. So if we go into Ansible configuration file, CFG, and again I'll change the color scheme, and I will search for the word check, and we can see that we've got a key that says host key checking equal false. That is what we want to enable, so I will uncomment that string and save our config. And now I will try our ping once again, and the password. Now we can see that we have successfully pinged all 4 switches. That means that Ansible can connect to our devices and it can manage them. So this is the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it has been helpful, and until next time.